The amount of water in a storage tank in gallons is modeled by a continuous function on the time interval 0 to 7, where t is measured in hours. In this model, rates are given as follows. The rate at which water enters the tank is f of t equals 100 t squared, sine of the square root of t, gallons per hour for 0 to 7. The rate at which water leaves the tank is g of t equals 250 for 0 to 3 and 2000 for 3 to 7 gallons per hour. The graphs of f and g, which intersect at t equals 1.617 and t equals 5.076, are shown in the figure. At time t equals 0, the amount of water in the tank is 5,000 gallons. Part A. How many gallons of water enter the tank during the time interval 0 to 7? Round your answer to the nearest gallon. For this, you just need to set up an integral with the equation for the gallons of water entering the tank. The integral has limits of 0 to 7, as indicated, and you plug in f of t dt. So when you plug it into your calculator, you would plug in 100 t squared sine of the square root of t dt. You then solve, and the calculator says that it's 8,263.81 gallons. Because it says to round to the nearest, you need to remember to do that, and you get 8,264 gallons. Part B. For the interval between 0 and 7, find the time intervals during which the amount of water in the tank is decreasing. Give a reason for each answer. The amount of the water would be decreasing when the amount entering is less than the amount leaving the tank. So this would be represented with the equation f of t is less than g of t. To find when this occurs, you just need to look back at the graph that they gave you and use the intersection points that they also gave you. So, to rewrite this to match the colors, it would be f of t is less than g of t. So, as you can see, this occurs between 0 and 1.67 because the red line is below the blue line. So that is your first interval. The next one would be from 3 to 5.076 because this is also the time where the blue is above the red line. So your next interval would be 3 to 5.076, and those would be your two intervals. Part C. For the interval between 0 and 7, at what time t is the amount of water in the tank the greatest? To the nearest gallon, compute the amount of water this time. Justify your answer. To find the maximum amount of water, you have to find the critical points of the amount entering the tank minus the amount leaving the tank. The critical points occur when the graph changes from positive to negative or negative to positive. Maximums only occur when it changes from positive to negative. So if you look back on the graph, you find that happens at t equals 3. But in this case, you also have to include the endpoints because they are also possible candidates for the maximum. So now that you have the 3 candidates, you can try and figure out which one is the right one. The easiest way to do this is to make a table. Over here it's going to be t, and this is going to be gallons of water. you'll solve for how many gallons of water are in the tank at each of the 3 candidates. So the first one is 3, and there's 0, and there's 7. For 0, it tells you in the problem that the initial condition is 5,000. So the tank starts with 5,000 gallons of water. So that is the value at t equals 0. Now, to find the amount of water at t equals 3, you have to use the initial condition, and then you also have to add the integral from 0 to 3 of f of t minus g of t. The only trick with this is that g of t is 2 different functions. For this domain of 0 to 3, the g of t is equal to 250, so that is what you would plug in and solve for. When you plug that in, you find out that there's 5,127 gallons at that point. So now to solve for how many are at t equals 7, you start again with the 1 from 3, 5,127, because that's the amount it has accumulated from 0 to 3, and now you're trying to solve for 3 to 7 so that you have all of it. So you're going to add this to the integral from 3 to 7 of f of t minus g of t. As I said before, you have to be careful with g of t and make sure you use the right domain. For t equals 7, you have to use g of t equals 2,000, and that will give you the right answer. When you solve this, you find out that it has 4,387 gallons of water at t equals 7. So to conclude, you would write a statement saying the amount of water is the greatest at t equals 3. And make sure you include your units. It also asked in the original question to say how many gallons of water are in there at that point. There are 5,127 gallons in the tank at t equals 3. And that's your answer.